So recording class. Also, if you want to hop into the Zoom meeting, if you're wanting to see the stuff on your screen, I'll admit you one at a time. So up in the Greg folder, the IGM class is Greg. It's the Zoom meeting link. And we got a few people in there already, but okay. So the things that are going to be complicated about these character designs, now that you have your first drawing of it, of course, there's drawing it over and over and over and over again, right? And I think the things that you may not be foreseeing is that you have to track every piece of detail that you put in there, right? Sierra, was it yours that had like the belt that had the little loops on it?
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to track each of those, right? And you'll start to notice little noisy things if they're not lining up right. So like it's things like that to maybe try to simplify. Like, what if you reduced those little loops by a few, right? Or what if you, instead of drawing the full loop, if there was a way that you could give the impression of that loop without having to draw every little detail of it, right? So in your line work, that's one of the issues that is going to start to come out is you've got to draw a lot of lines, right? And every one of those lines have the potential to jump and jitter around as the character moves, right? So the more of those that you draw, the more of those you have to keep track of as you're frame by frame by frame. Luckily, we're doing this digitally, and so when something starts to jitter, it's not the end of the world. You can always erase that pretty cleanly. A couple of other elements to think about: line thickness. Are all of your lines sort of the same thickness? Is there some thin parts to those lines? And does that line weight vary like stroke to stroke, right? Strangely, the thinner the line, the more you may notice little imperfections in it. And the more consistent the line, the more you may notice imperfections in it. What is your line representing? Is it an outline of your character? Is it when I say an outline, is it just showing the perimeter of your character? Or is your line also implying some of the shadows? For example, like where the arm meets the chest, are you using a taper to imply that that's kind of a tapering off of the shadow of that line? Stuff like that. The other thing to think about is the color of your lines. A lot of art, a lot of times people will do characters that like our sort of default go-to is like a black outline. I think it's because we draw with a pencil or a pen, we get used to that. Sometimes you can make the outlines of your character a darker shade of the character's color. That is a complete possibility, and that sort of takes away some of that hard edge of the line and makes it less distracting if there is a small imperfection in it, right? So these are things to play with. Now that you have this design, you can always rework it, you can always adjust on it. And in fact, this is your concept of your character, right? You can't actually animate that thing you have on your screen yet, right? A couple other things to think about is the shading. Right? You're going to have to color this character eventually. Is it something you can do pretty quickly with a fill bucket, right? Or does your character have 50 different colors that require you to keep track of everything, which makes the coloring part of each pass a little slower, right? And then the nice thing is like shadowing or shading of this, right? Is it completely flat shaded where it's like one solid color, or is it flat shaded with a shadow? It's a hard shadow. Is it a soft shadow? Hard shadows are probably going to be a little easier, but you kind of also have to track those as well, or you'll get little jitters in them. I wish I had brought some examples from some animation drawings where in traditional animation they would draw that in with a different colored pencil. And I have some in my office I can show you hanging on the wall, where if they needed to draw a shadow, they would take some blue pencil, which is probably non-photo blue, and sort of draw in the shape of the shadow and shade that in.
Yeah, I know a lot of the Japanese directions that like some of the keyframes from Akira have like different color lines for shading or line arts.
Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, like all of that, like the line where that shadow starts, that has to be tracked every frame, right? You have to kind of maintain that in a form of consistency. Coming up with all these things, is one of the reasons we just took a stab at this, right? We're gonna take your style. I didn't want to hinder you too much by making you worry about all of those things up front. You're going to solve this in the computer, right? You're going to come up with your solution to this as you're creating it, or as you're creating the animation. And so to make that a little easier, I wanted to do a simple animation in this class, right? Or for this next upcoming project. So let's kind of quickly hop into D2L. I'll show you really quick. And if we go to projects, I still need to finish these up in here. Project 1 is coming up soon. Bless. So if we go to let me look at our course info first and make sure. So our schedule. So we are currently here, September 4th. And this is where we're going to go through the frame-by-frame process, right? And so we're going to be kicking off this project 1, frame-by-frame jump today, and the character design exercise was due today, and giving you pretty much until over the weekend until Monday to have this. Now that sounds like a pretty quick turnaround. That's less of a turnaround than you actually had to do these 3 drawings of your character, right? It's a pretty short animation. It's somewhere between, I would imagine, it's going to be somewhere between 7 to 12 frames, right? It's a short one. And it's a cycling one, so we can see it happening over and over. So what we're going to do, let's look at this in the actual write-up of the project. So in this project, you're going to create a frame-by-frame animation of your character jumping up and down in a looping cycle. Right, so they're going to be jumping in place, like just straight up and down. So why? A character jumping is very similar to a bouncing ball. We're going to practice doing a full frame-by-frame character animation to learn the production pipeline for a shot, including the sketch, the inking, and the coloring. Right? So what we're going to do, create an animation of a character jumping up and down in an infinite loop. So really, the same way the bouncing ball could have been an infinite loop, this will be an infinite jumping loop, right? Take into consideration squash and stretch, ease in and out, solid drawing. This animation can be a simple line drawing with a single fill color, or whatever version of your character you will develop as you're doing this animation. Cycle the animation at least 5 times so you can see how it loops. If you look really closely, this is actually the same exact assignment as the bouncing ball assignment. I just changed it to character instead of ball. The project will be graded using a rubric and a 25-point scale based on the quality of work and the adherence to the instructions. So this is how all the projects will be graded. So let's look at this rubric really quick. So basically, this is sort of the structure that I use for a lot of my classes. Why can't I see the bottom? Oh, it's down here, I'm sorry. So we have 5 criteria. Each of those you can get a maximum of 5 points out of it, right? That gives you a total of 25 points. That actually works pretty well because most people can do the math and realize that if they got a 22, if you just multiply that by 4, because 25 is a quarter of 100, you can figure out what that would be in a 100-point scale, right? Not all the projects I think are 25 points, but I like trying to keep that so you don't have to break out a calculator to be like, was that good or bad? I don't know. I don't know what a 20 is. A 20 is about a 9. So, but basically what I will do in this, when I'm grading your project, I'll pull up this rubric, click through it. There's the option for incomplete. If you didn't do a certain thing, then that's just 0 points. And it goes from poor, weak, fair, good, all the way up to excellent, right? So this is just how it'll be graded. I don't like harping too much on this, but the reason this is beneficial, and again, for those of you who have any classes, this sounds familiar, I'm sure. This lets you know where you need to grow, right? Where you need, not where you need to, where you can improve, right? Recognize that it is completely within everybody in this room's capability to have 5s all the way down the board. Even if the first time you turn it in, it's 2s all the way down the board, right? That 2 just tells you, okay, that's where I am on my timing and spacing. day one, or day one after I've turned it in, I'm gonna start working on my timing and spacing and making that better. And you can drive that all the way up to a 5, right? This is part of in the way I structure this, is part of the growth mindset. Every one of these things, even if it's something you struggle with, if weight in your animation is something you struggle with, this can show you, this is a visual way of seeing how you can improve or where you need to improve, and sort of your path to getting. So I don't want to beat this to death. Last question: when does this due? So we already saw that in the schedule. It'll be due on Monday. So I'm not going to talk all class period today. I'm going to talk just a little bit and then kind of turn it over to you to work for the rest of the time you want. Friday will be work time. I will hop in here, check out the class, see if anybody has any questions, hang out for a while. If it just sort of spirals into us talking about the new She-Ra series, which is awesome. I love it. Do you all like it?
Yeah.
Anybody not watching it? You need to watch it. The new She-Ra?
It's on Netflix.
On Netflix?
It's quite good.
I'm digging it. I'm not saying better than the original She-Ra, but I am saying I like it. So, yeah.
Have you seen Dragon Prince yet?
I haven't. That's on my list. Is it
I
pretty
love Dragon Prince so much. It's so good.
It's good.
Did you watch Tuca Birdie?
Which one?
You got Birdie, yes.
No, I haven't.
It's really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
We do some pretty crazy things with the animation, which is really just visually fun. I don't think I can binge it, but it's definitely fun to watch.
Yeah, that's my problem. Like most of the animation stuff, like I can watch it on my computer while I'm working or something like that. But usually I go home and watch stuff with my wife. And if it's not like a binge show that me and her can binge together, usually it falls a little lower down the list. And she loves She-Ra, so we've been burning through that one. So, but yeah, I have to check some of them out. I need to opt for those instead of audiobooks, maybe. Okay, so this is actually a relatively short lecture today, relatively. I wanted to talk about a couple of things in here, mainly sort of the similarity of what we have. So let me get my files up. Actually, I'm gonna have to switch these monitors, aren't I? Hi, James. Display settings. I want to duplicate these displays. Changes. Is it still recording? It is. Okay. So now everything is a mess on here. Let me find it. Okay. So you all are probably, y'all are probably familiar with this picture. This is, I'm pretty sure, from it's either the Animator Survival Kit or Preston Blair's book. I can't remember.
It's the survival kit.
Yeah.
Is it the Survival Kit? I thought it was. This looks like Richard Williams' drawing. So this is pretty much what we're going to be doing, with the exception of this character is kind of jumping forward, but this is probably one of the better illustrations of it. Our character is going to be jumping straight up in the air, straight back down. And you have already drawn your character 3 times, right? And you've already animated, where's my mouse here? A bouncing ball. Right? We already recognize that there's a squash pose, there's a stretch pose, there's that pose with the character up in the air. Those are the exact same things. Okay? Actually, if you want to get into it, a really cartoony run are those exact 3 poses as well. You get that absorption of the weight for your squash, that's where you're building up the energy or where you're absorbing the energy. You get that jump or the contact or the stretch pose, right? That's where it's sort of redirecting that energy up in the air. In the case of a jump, you're pushing. In the case of a bouncing ball, it's that absorbed force that's sort of redirecting back up into the air. That mid-air point, that's the highest point that it's going to get, right? Whatever force that was pushed into the ground to get them off the ground, eventually gravity and that force sort of equal out, and we peak at the top of that, right? And then start coming back down. Now, there's another stretch pose in a bouncing ball right before you hit the ground primarily as a form of exaggeration. Like that doesn't really happen in a real ball. If you drop a ball, it doesn't stretch right before it hits the ground. But it looks good if we stretch it in a drawing. Partially because that is something we do when we are jumping, right? If you have ever tried to jump off of something and landed with your knees bent, that hurts real bad. Don't do that, right? And that's because that sort of stretched out pose, also you don't really want to land with your knees locked either, but that sort of stretched out pose gives you the most amount of room to absorb that impact. Now when we're doing it with a bouncing ball, it also kind of implies like a motion blur, like a streaking effect, and it exaggerates the difference between the squash pose and the pose right before it, so it gives you that like impact that feels a little stronger. But again, we got squash, stretch, the up in the air pose, a stretch on the way back down, and a squash, right? So if we have those poses, the rest of it's in between, right? So basically we're going to be drawing your character doing all of those poses, in betweening some of the stuff in between the stretch and the up pose to get that easing at the top and the easing back out. Now, you can do what we did for the bouncing ball, which is do half of it and then play it in reverse coming back down. It's probably going to be less appealing. I'm going to have my path going up. I'm going to have that be different than the way the character comes back down. So what I'm going to have on my character as they go up, I'm going to maybe have them go up with their left leg first and then come down with their left leg first. So it's asymmetrical how it goes up and then back down. Right? So kind of got the blueprint of what we're going for. Let's look at sort of the template of how we can work on that now. So, actually, before we get into that, so like I've told you before, I'm teaching a 2D animation class. Drawing is not my strength, right? Drawing is something that I really want to get better at. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to teach this class, is because if I'm going to be showing stuff up here in front of 17 people, I got to put a little work into that, right? And there's a quote attributed to Pat Summitt, but a lot of people have said it before her, which is, take your weakness, make it your strength. So one of the things I've been doing is working on my character design that I'm going to be using for the next few animations. So I want to introduce you to Nigel, the surly unicorn. So, Nigel's story, roughly, he was born a donkey to a very abusive farmer who overworked him, fed him moldy oats, left him tied up out in the rain. Right? And then one day, the rope that he was tied up with, this is in the Middle Ages outside of Sussex, right? So one day, the rope that he was tied up with dry rotted, fell apart, and he was like, oh, I'm going to run away. So he ran away into the woods where he found this maiden next to a magical pond who fed him some magic water, the first kindness he'd ever experienced, and it turned him into a unicorn. And so now he's exacting his revenge against all of the farmers in the world and setting free the beasts of burden, right? Using his newfound magical powers, of course. So this is a rough sketch. I didn't put too much work into the exact line detail, like how this is going to be. This is still sort of pencil lines. And actually, for me, I'm going to try to see if I can achieve some of that in the drawing, primarily because I'm never happy with when I try to do clean inking. When I try to do clean inking, I see the little imperfections in every line. It drives me nuts. The way to get rid of that for me in my style is to just go ahead and let the lines be a little sloppy as part of the style, right? You can sort of see the pencil line. You actually saw that in some of the older Disney animations. Once Xerox machines were invented, they realized they could lay off an entire department of people and photocopy the line drawing straight onto cells, right? And so you'll start seeing some of the animations, probably around the 60s and 70s, where you still see the texture of the pencil drawing in the illustrations, right? So I'm kind of going for something a little like that, I think. Again, this is partially a discovery process for me. and it will be for you too. It was really easy to draw one drawing of Nigel, and actually it's one of those things too, when you walk away from him for a few days and you come back and you go, oh man, I needed to scale down his other eye. Like that was a little too big. He's got that one eye that's kind of bulging. So yeah, you're gonna find those things. I'm gonna correct for those as I'm doing the drawing. This was my concept. Once I start drawing every frame, I gotta come up with a way that I can successfully do that, right? You can see I'm already trying to come up with some of that, like simplifying the shapes that make up the shadow in the ears, probably simplifying like a little tuft of hair on his chest and a little tuft of hair on his elbow. I'm going to come up with a very simplified way of implying those things, right? If you think of Homer Simpson, right, has those two hairs on the top, the little squiggly M on the side. That's something that any animator can draw and stay on model every time. Okay, so he's still got some issues that will be resolved as I start doing the frame-by-frame pass of it. Here's the thing about frame-by-frame animation for me, though, and I think for most people, is most people aren't such good drafts people that they are able to just immediately start drawing this full character every frame, right? Roughly, how long did it take you to do one drawing, one of the three drawings? Toss out a number.
Like just drawing it?
Or the full illustration of it, drawing color. Yeah, let's just say the line art frame.
The line's like 45 minutes.
45 minutes, right? So again, what if we have to do like 10 of these, right? And you're spending 45 minutes on each drawing, and then after you've done 10 of them, you realize, oh, that's messed up. I got to throw away 5 of those, right? You throw away a lot of time, right? So I'm not wanting to discover how Nigel should move with a finished drawing. I want to discover how he should move. I want to figure out how he should move with a drawing that I can do in a minute, or maybe less, maybe slightly more, right? So that's one of the things we're gonna come back to. Other idea, how long does some of your other drawings take? Anybody able to talk 45 minutes?
An hour.
An hour? An hour. So I'll be honest, I fight with this. Nigel this illustration of Nigel probably took me somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.5 hours, right? I don't want to mess that up every frame, right? Now, you will see if you watch video footage of like the old school masters. If you're watching, Milk Call draw, yeah, he just starts drawing Mickey Mouse like it's nothing, right? Some of that is Milk Call had drawn thousands and thousands and thousands of versions of that character. And he was confident enough in his ability to draw that he was drawing it fast. He was figuring that out. If you watch Glenn Keane, if you watch him do drawings, like he just starts drawing the character, right? But Glenn Keane is sort of the Michelangelo of animation. So we can't compare ourselves to that. We have to figure out how we can stay consistent and on model for every drawing. So I'm not going to draw this every time. I'm going to break this down into our building blocks that we talked about in previous classes, right? Nigel, for the most part, is made up of these 3 spheres, of these 3 circles, right? And I can draw that in 30 seconds, right? I also intentionally simplified the way his arms were built, partially for appeal. I like that pinched, smaller area in the upper arm that gets bigger all the way down. Sort of makes a funnel shape. It's something I can draw a very simple gesture drawing of really quickly. Right? These are the masses I have to draw every time. And that means I should be able to animate this version of Nigel pretty quickly, right? This is my first pass for me. And at least in this exercise, I strongly encourage you to do it that way as well. The reason for that is if it's taking you an hour a drawing, once you get 10 drawings down the road, even if you're getting all of the motion correctly, that head will get smaller, or that chest will get bigger, right? Stuff will start to warp one small amount at a time, frame by frame. And by the time you get to the end of your animation, your character will look different than it did at the beginning. And again, that's called staying on model. You've gone off model if you do that, right? So this is what I need to be able to see. I also would like to go ahead and see my original version of Nigel But if I know that these are those three masses, I'm not going to trust my ability to maintain those sizes. I'm going to take this into Toon Boom and use this, right? So, in fact, I'm going to start with my bouncing ball scene. I encourage you to as well. You could always also just import in the stage into a new file, but I'm just going to go ahead and open up my bouncing ball scene here. Okay. Okay. I think I've shown you all this before, right? This is my bouncing ball, and again we see this is my up pose, this is my stretch pose, this is my squash pose. I did this frame by frame for every one of these drawings, like animating it on ones, and that still just put me at 15 drawings. So if you decide to do this jump animating it on ones, the maximum amount of drawings you're going to get somewhere between 15. Yours may be a little slower, so it may be like 17, 18, maybe 20, right? And that's one of the reasons, like, we're going to simplify this. I'm also going to change my bouncing ball, not to be completely on twos, but I'm going to take out a few drawings that I don't think are necessary. So I do think my squash and my stretch, I like having those on ones. But I'm probably going to go ahead and put my my easing at the top on twos. Right? So we'll look at that here in a second. First, I want to bring in Nigel and have him in my scene somewhere at the proportions that I plan on redrawing them. Right? So to do that, I'm going to go File, Import Images. I'm going to browse to that folder that I was just looking at, which is here. Copy that, Control C, V, open. And I'm going to bring in drawings 1 and 4. That was the line drawing and the finished illustration. I'm going to hit open. Now, something I want to do, I want to create a single layer named Nigel, that's fine. But I don't want to keep as original bitmap, I want to import as a Toon Boom bitmap drawing. Now you can also import as a vector drawing, and it tries to do like an auto trace of it. So that is something that we maybe could use later depending on how you designed your character once we start rigging it. But for right now, I'm just using these as reference. Right? I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Import them in kind of slowly. And you'll see, it doesn't look like they're there, but it's because they're on a new layer here. And what it did is it imported one drawing onto frame 1, one drawing onto frame 2. Right? So that's cool. I'm completely fine with that. Just so I can see these, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. So I will duplicate selected layer. So I have 2, right? And for this one, I'll delete the second frame. For this one, I'll delete the first frame. And then I have Nigel now in both of these. So, so basically what I have is the line drawing on one, the full color drawing on the other. Now, I can see from my bouncing ball that that's going to happen right here in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale these down to make Nigel the proportions I want him to be, the scale I want him to be. I'm going to scale down these references and sort of move them off to the side so I can just animate him in the middle. And this is me just kind of adjusting these for aesthetic purposes while I work. So this first one, go ahead and select it. There. I'll hold down Shift to keep it at the right scale. I think I'm going to animate him probably about like that. Right. So just so I can keep them the same proportions, I'll go ahead and scale this one right on top of them. And then I can hold Shift, slide this one over to here. Slide this one over to here. And now I have both the finished version of what I want Nigel to look like and my rough proportions of what I want Nigel to look like in the same scene. Yes?
How did you move the picture again?
So I'm using I'm using this selector. Now, when you imported them in, make sure, I'm going to import images. Make sure you have it checked as import as Toon Boom bitmap images. If you have it set as keep original bitmap, you can't move them easily. You have to use a different way to do that. So that's why I switched that to that. So, did that answer the question?
Like, did you just circle it to move it?
Actually, if you click this button right here and go to like the select, it should like just turn it into like a lasso. So you can circle it or you can just hover over it and click. But you have to make sure you're on the layer that the drawing is on, right? So, and I can actually, this will be color ref and let's do. Did that work for you? Okay, cool. So, now the last thing I do want to point out, or not last thing, but with these two layers, is that I still just have that on frame 1, right? So later they disappear. So quick shortcut keyframe. If I want to extend this frame all the way out to the end here, and I'm just going to make this like really long just for repeating purposes. I can go to the end, click there, and hit F5. And F5 will extend that drawing all the way out to that point on our keyframe. I'm trying to remember the name of what F5 is again. Is it? There, it's fill empty cells. So it's this button right here, I think, does it?
So I just realized this from like last night, just messing around with Toon Boom. So like in Adobe Animate, when you hit F5 and like F6, they act kind of differently than how we work in this program. So for F5 to extend like the exposure, you want to hit plus and minus to like raise and lower the exposure. Because F5 will like add a new.
Yeah.
It'll do something different.
If you what it will do is it will extend it to wherever you clicked on your timeline.
Yeah.
If you currently have it extended and you hit F5, it asks how many you want to do.
Yeah.
And you're saying if you
ones
hit.
and twos, you hit like plus to extend the exposure.
So will plus do that in here as well?
Yeah.
If I just do shift. Oh, that's nice. Didn't realize that.
Because
So.
in Animate it does that if you hit F5.
Okay. So you can use your plus and minus to extend or cut those out. Now, will it push another keyframe at the end of that forward, or will it
It'll
copy?
push, even if there are like blank keyframes in between keyframes, it'll push everything back and forward.
Okay.
So it won't like fill in blank ones, but it'll just push everything.
Okay, so that's a
pretty
little
useful.
different. So really, if you look at what he's saying here, if I wanted to extend this keyframe on my bouncing ball and I started hitting the plus, watch what it does to the keyframes after it, is it pushes them further down or takes them further down. So really what this is doing is this is just extending our exposure, but that's actually a really good retiming tool, right? If you have something that's like, oh, that's holding too long, just hit the minus key. That's a
You
great.
can turn ones to twos, because like what I would do in like animated Flash is I would like animate on ones and then space on to twos, and I didn't know how to do that here.
Oh, but that's a great tool. Thank you for bringing that up. The weird thing for me is I am still learning a lot about Toon Boom, and it's those little things that that are very beneficial to hear. So if anybody else discovers little things like that, share them. So F5 will extend all the way out to there. So now I have my bouncing ball playing for one loop, and then this extended all the way out. Now what I want to do is I want to use these bouncing ball keyframes to make a template for what I want my jump to be. Now when I was drawing the bouncing ball, it wasn't that hard to draw in a drawing, so I just animated it on ones. I'm going to change this. I'm going to make parts of this on twos and delete other frames, right? So I can kind of take some of that really fine easing out of the middle. Also for me, it makes very little sense to start him up in the air. That's like a repeated dropping, right? I mean, it works, but to me, like in my head, it makes more sense to start on the ground, jump up, land on the ground. So I'm going to rework this bouncing ball. I'm going to start with this. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of these frames before it, and then move these back to here. Okay, so I get the squash, the stretch, and it goes up. So really what I'm going to do is on this easing, starting probably from here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this keyframe, and then this keyframe, and I'm just going to go ahead and extend those out to make that on 2s. And so now I was able to get rid of a few drawings that way, right? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drawings to get my character up in the air. Now, for me, I also want to hold my anticipation here. So I may add an extra anticipation pose, like just to kind of hold that longer. And I don't want to just use a single drawing. I want to kind of push them a little bit, keep them alive. If you just pause an image for multiple frames and hold it there, it kind of freezes, and people see that as it being kind of dead. Right? So the old animators used to call it keep alive. You'll hear about it call it a moving hold. It's where your character is pretty much in the same pose, but maybe just changing just a little bit to keep it feeling alive. So I'm going to put one of those on my squash as well. Let's do F5. Nope, sorry. It was the plus sign, wasn't it? Yeah, plus, we'll scoot that down 1. Let me see what happens if I add one here too. I think it's going to, not bad. So if I added one here as well, I was able to get this down to, that's not bad. I'm probably going to add a couple more hold poses here. So make it 4 frames long. So really that little section there is going to be 2 poses to have it animated on 2. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to get it up there. And I'll need probably 6 more to get it back down, right? Because I can keep that end pose there as a looping pose. I'll use my cycle tool to make this loop. So highlight that, right click, and copy cells from the timeline. Click out here, paste cycle, and instead of normal forward, I'll do reverse. Hit OK. Now I think it probably kept my up in the air pose there, so I can delete those 2, and then pull it back. So imagining this is a character now. Let's see if this feels a little bit more like a jump. There we go. So I think it does. That's my frame range. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I can animate that. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Somewhere between 12 to 13 drawings to do it with this. I've left my bouncing ball in here as reference, right? Sort of, some of it is like the essence of the drawing. Some of it is the just reference of like that's where the spacing should be. Little bits at a time though, I may start phasing that ball out, like once I've got my other keys in there. This is just also giving me like a height reference. Yeah. So now that's working. Let me go ahead and save this. So file, save as new version, and I'll call this Nigel Jump 1. Okay. All right. So let's start drawing. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this drawing. I'll call this Nigel. I'm going to call it sketch. And I'm going to do mine in vector. You're welcome to do yours in bitmap if that works better for you. And I'm just going to go through here and draw kind of quickly those masses that we're seeing over here to get that jump to happen. Okay. Now, again, the reason we're doing this is so it's a little easier to make changes quick. Like we don't become married to the drawings. I'm going to use the brush tool because I'm just kind of sketching. Maybe make that a little smaller. So again, this is him squatting or squashed down, right? So I want to do this shape. The next one probably about like that, maybe. Actually, no. Let's undo that. I want to do I'm going to go ahead and keep it straight up and down, but I'm going to curve him a little bit so I can get that shape. Just a little small to me. Okay.
What you can do, which is really helpful sometimes, if you have a character reference right next to it, is just draw it on the reference and just move it, unless you want it to deform.
Oh, it's not bad. Yeah. I'm kind of using it on here just so I can kind of look at it, because I'm going to also do like some line of action stuff. Yeah, that is a good idea, like to draw it over here and move it over. So one of the things to remember about this, one of the reasons vector is helpful, I can very quickly grab this stuff and move it or adjust it however I want, right? And so really what I'm trying to get here, just to kind of show you this, is I'm trying to get a line of action that makes sense to me. Now again, if you remember line of action, that is the line that sort of flows through our character's body, right? So if he's standing up straight, we got sort of this like swooping, like kind of loose line, right? What I want to do is make that line go from loose to feeling kind of crinkly, right? Like it's kind of squashing down. And so you could start with that if you wanted to. Like I really am wanting to get like that curved in shape right there. And again, this doesn't really matter how messy this gets because this is not going to be what people see at the end anyway. Get this stuff. Get in here. So for the legs, I can do a little bit more of a bend shape. I'm still not happy with that location. Still sitting around, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to start here. That's not amazing. So I got that pose. I'm going to get my up pose next. So it's probably somewhere in there. Yeah, it's that one right there. So again, if I hit F5 and bring this out to here, I can create a new drawing right here and be able to see this with my onion skin. Right? There. Just to make this a little clearer, I'm going to move all of Nigel over to here just a little bit more. There we go. So here on this one, I want him up in the air, but I don't really want him to be squashed too much, just kind of a neutral pose up in the air. So again, I'm just trying to keep the right proportions. Let's go back to this one again, or else I need to kind of get some more information about his torso in there. There we go. I think, yeah. So I'll bring this one up a little bit. Now, I know some of you are probably familiar with this part of it. I always like to, those three masses we were talking about out here, if we look at the ones in the chest, we get the pelvis and the rib cage. These two masses tell us about where that mass is, but it doesn't tell us much about the line of action. And sort of filling in that squishy part does. Like if I do this, then we get this line of action going through here, right? Versus those same two spheres, if we're doing it a little bit more like this, then we can get this line of action going through here, right? A lot of people, I've heard this referred to in some tutorials as the bean shape, like deciding how that bean is going to be deformed. If you're wanting your character to stretch, maybe you're getting this like stretchy shape in the middle. So all of that stuff is sort of additional information that is pretty helpful once you start trying to draw the actual character. Okay, I'm going to probably go ahead and copy this one. I'm actually just going to do the up for right now. So I need to do my stretch as well. So it's a workflow thing, right? Right now we have our drawing 1, Nigel Squash, right? We have that all the way through to frame 12. Right there on frame 5, I need to insert a new drawing. But if I just start drawing on this, it's going to draw on that Nigel Squash drawing, right? So you probably are already aware of this, but if we clicked this button right here, wait, wrong button. If we click this button right here, it's going to create a completely blank drawing, right? Sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes it's not. If you click the one right beside it, right here, it's going to create a duplicate of this drawing that if you edit it, is not going to be destroyed, right? Now, that doesn't mean, and this isn't the perfect case for doing that, but it's not, we could probably do something with it, right? I'm going to try it, and then I'm probably going to erase the whole thing and redraw it. So if I did this duplicate version of that, you'll see now it's a separate drawing. I can go in here and just grab like the head shape, right? This is my stretch. And I could rotate it like this and start to really stretch out these masses, right? Maybe I'm happy with where the feet are or something like that. Where this becomes beneficial is if you want to make a small change to a character, right? If a character is just standing, like these will probably become more handy on our moving pose drawings, right? Where I can just keep most of the drawing and like maybe have the ears drift in a little bit more. So I did want to show you that exists. In this case, I'm really just going to keep the head maybe. In fact, even with that, I'm probably going to stretch the head just a touch. Here. Rotate it back so he's kind of stretching back here. And again, this is kind of off to the side here where we can see this. When we're talking squash and stretch, right? Again, all characters are kind of made up of these three masses that are unchanging, right? So we get these three things. If I want to squash this character, if you think about that, those masses aren't going to get smaller. They're probably not going to stretch too much unless you're wanting to make them cartoony. But the distance between these can, right? So if I want to stretch my character out, maybe what I do is I stretch out the distance between those three masses, right? And if I want to squash my character, maybe I push in the distance of those three masses, right? Now, we're going to play with this a little bit more as time goes on. But the way you offset that is going to have a very serious impact on your on the way the weight feels like it's working, right? So let me go back here a little bit and show you. There we go. Grab all of these. If I want it to feel like my character has like the bottom of the character, like his legs are being yanked downward, right? If I start moving this piece downward first, like one frame earlier, and then the next frame, these stretch down, and then the next frame, all three of them start to move, then it's going to feel like those three pieces are all connected. I like to think of them while they're moving as being connected with like a little string, right? And if this mass moves here, eventually it has to pull this mass behind it and this mass behind it. So that means we can use, for those of you from character animation or who are familiar with some of these from other classes, this is a way we can manipulate our quote unquote lead and follow, right? What mass is leading, what other masses are following along behind. And that's really important in terms of how emotion is conveyed. If a character is feeling curious, the head may lead that action, right? And they like kind of, the head goes first and then the chest follows later. If the character's feeling sluggish and tired, they don't want to go to work today, it's like their legs are dragging their head along behind them, right? And that lead and follow has a lot of impact on a performance of a character. So, these three shapes are very, for me, very useful. So, again, stretching these out to make it feel like it's a pretty big jump. The hips are going to go up a little bit. The chest is going to go up a little bit. The chest was a little bigger than that, right? I feel like that head is feeling a little small in comparison over here. It's probably scaled it down a little too much. I'm going to stretch these out just a little bit more. And one more thing I'm going to do. If I go back to this frame here, you'll see that my line of action, for the most part, is like this curve, like this C shape, where the opening of the C is pointed this way. For this drawing, I'm going to try to reverse that just a little bit. So I'm going to pull it back here. I'm not going to make it too exaggerated. Actually, maybe I do need to pull that up a little bit more. I need to pull all of it up just a little bit more. There we go. And that way, when I'm getting this line of action, it's a little bit more like this curve, right? Now, I want it to feel like it's pushing off the ground and kind of stretching his legs a little bit too. And again, like I said, I want it to feel like he's leading with one leg, so I'm going to go ahead and pick this one up, a little bit something like that. These masses. I'm sure somewhere there's a figure drawing teacher watching me make these tiny little scratch marks, and they're like very annoyed at me. That's all right. A small detail that I'm kind of reminding myself periodically as I go through this is that where he is sort of a horse in nature, I'm trying to keep this line from his neck kind of straight, and then the curve is going to be on this side. And then any chance I have to play around with how these shapes are changing over time. I'm going to do that one. That. Actually, I want to have both of his arms kind of flying out behind him if I can. So kind of doing like this. And then this other one will be down here within the periphery. Now, some of these things that I'm doing on here, they may change. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my other layers here, just see how this is feeling. If I extend that out to F5. Actually, let's extend it all the way out to the end just so I can see it. So if I just watch those three poses. All right. So something I am noticing, he's jumping pretty high for the amount of force he's putting out there. And he's also kind of going off the screen. So I'm going to move him down a little bit. One of the other things I could do, let's try that. Let's see if that's working a little better. So one of the other things I could do here is if I'm unhappy with, I kind of started them floating just a little bit here. I could create a ground plane. I'm trying not to make his feet perfectly parallel to the ground or to the bottom of the frame. But if you wanted to draw something in there to make it a little more even, that's fine. Sometimes you want to change the entire thing. I don't really want to, but I do want to show you this tool. I think it's under here. Yeah. Reposition all drawings. So what this is going to allow us to do, apply to all frames, I think this will work, is if I move this over to here, now all of my drawings are over here, right? That could be beneficial if you just wanted to make it like a little smaller overall. If I wanted to something like this, then I can get something like this. Right? That is not really a rigging tool. That is a way of manipulating multiple drawings on the element level at the same time. So, I think you're getting the point. I think you're understanding what I'm going for here. So this is phase one for me. I honestly don't care what these drawings look like. The sloppier, the better. That's not really true. Like, if they're sloppy, that doesn't bother me because I'm not figuring out details. I'm not figuring out anything about his nose. I haven't even drawn his eyes. I don't know are the eyes going to be blinking, right? All of that stuff I can figure out once I figured out some very important stuff like weight, timing. And if I spend forever crafting a drawing that has the wrong timing, I just have to throw drawings away. These are drawings that, like, sort of once I get in a habit or a groove of this, I can crank out these drawings pretty quickly. Also, like, the more you draw him or the character, the more you will get comfortable doing that drawing, and the faster you will be able to do it. The cool thing about it is this drawing right here, this first drawing I did, let's say I'm just like, that is not working, right? Well, I've spent like 2 minutes on that drawing, right? Maybe a little bit more because I showed it in me doing it in class. But that means I should have no fear whatsoever about doing that, right? If I've spent 45 minutes on it, I may keep reworking that drawing for another 2 hours because I don't want to throw away 45 minutes of work. I can throw away a minute of work, right? In fact, I probably will. That first drawing I was not very happy with. I don't know, I may pull it back in and use parts of it. So does that make sense? Now, I recognize that this is the last time we meet in class as an official class until it's done. You have like today to sort of do, I'd say today you probably work out sort of your pencil or your sketch of it. After that, you're like, but then I have this ugly pencil drawing of it, right? I would like you to get as close as you can by Monday to having a fully inked, fully colored version of this. The reason is not necessarily I'm wanting it to be finished, it's because I want you to figure those things out. I want you to figure out how you want the character to be colored, how you want the shading to work, right? So don't spend forever on, no, I don't want to say it that way. So budget your time to where you are spending an appropriate amount of time on getting the motion looking right, and then you have time to re-illustrate each of those. My workflow, right now, this is the Nigel sketch layer, right? After I'm completely done with that, bring it back. After I'm completely done with that and do all my drawings, which I'm going to do today in class after I've kind of finished talking, I'm just going to keep doodling up here while you all work. After I'm done with that, then I go back in and create a new layer. So, that was not what I want to do. New drawing layer, and we'll call this Nigel Lines. I'm going to say Nigel Lines 1. And this, for me, this is where I go in and figure out the rough version of my line work, right? Where I'm getting closer to what this drawing looks like. For me, I sometimes have a lines 2, but probably not on every drawing. Like sometimes I'll just figure out a few of them on Nigel Lines 1. Because I still have to figure out some stuff from these masses, right? Like the eye shapes, right? So sometimes you may do a lines layer. Let's do Nigel lines 1, Nigel lines 2, right? So in Nigel lines 1, maybe you're just figuring out like the extra detail of the drawing. Like here's that, here's his eyes. Gotta get that donkey nose shape that's kind of hard. He's got this little like hoof thing here, right? He's got the chin, right? But this isn't like an amazing drawing. I'm trying to draw from too far away too. This isn't a great drawing either, right? This is still more figuring it out, right? For me, after I figure that stuff out, then maybe on lines 2, that's where I do my final inking. Now, you're also welcome to continue reworking the Nigel sketch, erasing stuff, whatever works for you to get that detail in. For me, it usually, an illustration, I usually do really rough masses, sort of refining in the shapes, a rough line pass, a cleanup line pass. For an animation, I usually do the rough version. I try to clean that up or do it in another layer, and then I do my line pass. So usually I don't do more than 3 line layers. And then on my line layer, I will make my my color layer on this, like this layer, not a new drawing layer. So it's a new drawing layer, not a new animation layer. Yes.
Is there any way to like make the opacity on the sketch layers lower?
There
There is.
is.
You have to right click the layer.
Do you?
It might be the properties too, like depending on.
The layer properties, yeah. So we're in the tool properties right now. I can add this, add layer properties, drawing, transparency type, pre-multiply with black. Well, so one of the other things you can do too, and this is something I'll do sometimes with the sketch stuff, is I will create a new color in here. So we already have this fill blue. It's kind of a lighter blue. And if I go in here on the Nigel sketch layer, and select all of those, I can just click the blue. And then in my drawing layer, they're going to show up much more faint. I do think that there is a way to turn down that opacity though, and I don't actually remember what it is. What are these?
Maybe in like that changes how many layers you can. Maybe in the properties of just like the program, the opacity of sketch layers.
And over here in this?
No, in like file or edit and preferences.
Oh, I get you. Like over here.
Maybe.
I will look that up and see if I can come up with that.
I'm pretty sure there's like something where you can make it as transparent.
Oh, there is. Go back to layer properties. There's a tab called Advanced, and then scroll all the way down, and then there's an opacity option at the end.
Aha. So that's going to give you. Okay. Yeah. So that's going to give you the opacity of this layer. So yeah, again, that's on the Advanced tab, all the way down to the bottom. You can scroll that down to like 22%. And that's going to come through, hopefully a little more faintly. Not really doing a great job of that, is it? I think there's also some onion skinning stuff too that would probably be an option as well. Yes?
There's another way to do it for like the layer itself. So like to the left of the pencil on that layer, just click on that. And then you
Opacity, yeah. I feel like there's also advanced onion skin. I think there's something in the onion skinning as well, like if you wanted to play around with some of this in your view. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a handful of ways. Also, something else you may have noticed earlier, so I can remember what was it? Space. Oh no. That wasn't good. I don't remember the button to get back to that. There he is. Is it shift control? There it is. So we have space that will allow us to pan around, right? So something that's pretty handy is if I hold down Control Alt, we get this, and this will also allow us to tilt our screen. And so this is going to become very handy as you're doing your inking, right? And I think if you double tap the pegboard or what it was, there's, yeah, Control Alt. There's a way of getting this to snap back too, and I can't remember what that is right off the top of my head.
There's a button at the bottom that makes it snap next to the percentage of how big it is, I think. That, like to the left, I think that snaps.
There it is. Yeah, that resets your view. So that one right there. Okay. So all of these are going to be some pretty handy tools as you start working on it. How do you feel about this? Does this feel doable?
It's intimidating.
It is intimidating. So look at our schedule really quick.
It takes time and you practice.
Yeah, it does take some time, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to try not to go through to take up the entire class today. Get as close to it as you can, right? Let's aim for that. So we're frame by frame by the 9th. Today's the 4th. Let's see if we can do it. Okay. At the very least, try to get your line work done. Get to that line work pass. Actually, once you get to that point, it's a little easier sometimes to do the color after that. Like even if it's just dumping a couple of fill colors in there and you're not worrying about the shading. Now I will show you one more thing, just as a reminder. It's one of the first things we really talked about in here, which is once you get to this clean up line pass, right? My personal preference is switch to the pencil tool. Okay. The reason for that is you can get your tool settings the way you want, right? You get this pencil brush, black in here, right? This pencil brush. It's going to have some pretty nice smoothing on it, so you're not going to fight with it forever. You can adjust your smoothing here, you can adjust your size here, right? It's got some nice taper to it that just happens automatically. So for this line here, you're gonna see it's gonna get that. But the biggest reason I love this tool is I will also keep the cutter tool turned on. And then with the pencil, it's really easy to start getting some cleaned up line work a little more quickly, because you can go in here with this cutter tool and start trimming these pieces off. Right? And so that's a nice way of getting some stuff a little more quickly, right? It is going to give you these weird gaps here, and that's because that is still 2 lines, right? That is still these 2 lines here. Again, we can select those, click this little band-aid, and it'll kind of merge them together. Not well, apparently. There's some settings we can adjust for that, though. No, what just do? Oh. Set on that. I think there's an angle setting in here. Anyway. But the pencil will allow you to do a little bit more of that. And if you use that cutter tool, this is an enclosed shape. Well, if you enclosed it. Like, this is an enclosed shape, so it's really easy to go in there after that and fill bucket that with a solid color. Even if what you plan on doing after that is just deleting that one, right? So it's a really nice nice tool. Also remember, this will allow you to do some very detailed editing on a line. Like if you just can't get that line the shape you want it to be, using this tool here. Go in here and make some edits to it, right? All right. Questions?
You do that with a pencil, and then it gives you all those options with pencils here.
Mhm. Yeah, so the pencil tool is creating a stroke with a thickness and like taper to it, right? The brush tool is creating
It's like
a
solid
mass.
shape.
You know, it's creating a solid shape. Right? And so usually brushes are used for filling in masses of areas, and the pencil tool is used like for the sort of the stroke or the outline of that. Okay. Questions, comments? Yes.
I'm having issues with extending and shortening frames, and like moving them around. Is there any way that?
Yeah, I'll come back there and check it out. Is it other questions before I kind of hop around and help people individually? Yes.
I was wondering if we could do one-on-one.
Well, yeah, I can hop over, look at each thing one-on-one, answer your questions. So, I know it's not a ton of time, but the rest of the class today is yours. We got about probably 20, 30 minutes. Feel free to, I'm guessing most of you have already kind of started off on your poses. I would say to sort of pace yourself. I would try to aim at getting all of your sketchy animation done sometime Friday, and that way you have some time before Monday to sort of finish up the inking of it and stuff. Yeah, cool. The rest of the class is yours. I want to continue to record, and I will sort of, as time permits, I'm going to get up here and sort of finish my sketchy pass, or at least keep working on my sketchy pass. Oh, I will be here in class on Friday, but I'm not taking attendance. Fridays are work days. Just if I didn't cover that enough, clearly enough, it's work time, so I don't take attendance. I just assume if you're not working here on Friday, that means you're planning on working somewhere else to make up for it, or at some other time.
So Fridays are always work days, right?
Unless we talk about it beforehand. Like, I thought about having one this time, but I think we're going to do it for you. Okay, so let's look, plus we'll add it and then minus the level of the make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So what I'd say to do, I'll move the sketch up around, pushing it, like exaggerate it until you think you've broken it, push it further and see like sometimes like when we're drawing repeatedly, it feels like we exaggerated too much, and if you walk away from your arms, that's so yeah, like you have a squash on the middle, so think of it this way. You have the chest mass and they're squashed together, so this is normal. It's squashed together and they have to stick together. And then when we stretch up this jump, they stretch apart. Right? And then as we get to the top, sometimes the bottom one kind of catches up a little bit and get really squashed. You can try moving around those up ones, just squash it more, they're just going to feel a little bit more like squishy character or lumber.
I did this exact same
So that's
thing
not bad.
a year ago.
You don't have to squash too much. Probably
Probably
good.
maybe 6%. Yeah, they'll get adjusted like compared side by side. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's wrong. So are you doing sing along TV or anything? I just like to see these my hours.
Probably
Yeah, I like to know she's delicious stuff.
Well, I mean,
Plus a hiring
stuff.
and also
I think this would work really well in the brief too. But you have a lot of little details in here that are
Jeff, you ready for
Yeah,
Like
it's
only
almost
thing that I use is this like black shirt and you need to do with like gray, so you can see some of the detail in there, especially.
Yeah, I did it freshman year.
And you can see that eyeball right there.
No,
I don't know,
saying.
I like it when there's reference, but I don't know that
Real. Do that.
I like it. I love it.
Crap.
I think you're probably going to find some spots that will simplify a little bit more. But I don't think that
This is my last class.
it is hard to walk around and say everything. I do the same thing. I'm like,
What?
yeah. There are certain designs that's kind of how I was like, recognize that everything walk around classes. That is a struggle.
You know how like have dressing coffee or whatever? I just like forgot what it is.
Actually, I like your stuff. Everybody kind of falls in their own thing.
I just have that one. But like,
I thought you were learning something, you know, like, oh, I would love it.
but I'm also the person that has to back up stuff like that, and then like we're considering talking on our stuff for like class. Just to be like, oh, I see what this looks like, and then I don't yeah, that's something I had. I don't know.
Well, like, here's my one.
Really? Oh my gosh,
So,
so
I had four, and then last week, I found out.
I think the difference is this, why this goes a little more live.
They need an artist.
Your lines are pretty
Like, put me in there with some simple stuff.
and I think this, like, really going out.
I wanted to be part of that. And so, like, I was like, put me in there, and then I found out that I had four classes left to take, so, like,
And this has been
I just three semester.
that might help a little bit, but then
Now I have to
that,
decide what I want to do.
Maybe I
Can you drop like the other class? No, that's the thing. It has to do that one. I'm like, yeah. No, I only want to continue to draw because this one, but also
and just see if it's starting to feel like.
yeah, it's like so fun.
You make the pencil line more smidge, because those are really pretty small.
So that's
Actually, I can probably,
compact.
I really like how much
I can find something to put in there, it's fine. It's just
and maybe they're on the line weights for like the lines that are eyes a little bit, make those a little thinner. I mean, it's a really small thing.
I don't know what the fuck that is. Take it and go somewhere. That's what I was doing.
That is, my opinion is not despite what class you have. My opinion is not.
Yeah, I would love to keep it. I just want to make it.
If you're not feeling like this,
Yeah, it's just like, it was like, I'm the only one who
Forget the hips are probably about the same size, chest a little
I
smaller.
do. So like, put me in there, I'll make some cool stuff. And it's like, you know, like, double wing.
I also just don't like the professionals. It's kind of
It's gonna be really nice.
a more squat.
So that's what I'm trying, that's why I work on both. Because I was gonna put the and
well, I have like so many stories of like people in industry.
yeah, I think they kind of intertwine. Like,
Yeah.
they're kind of different skill sets.
Like one of the things that
I think
it kind of
in certain areas, so like, so, I mean that in terms of stuff. Yeah, so like, I think it's hard as
But some of that may be the
bones in the art, right?
this feels like the
Whereas like 3 art, you also have to be mindful of style and all that stuff to try to like align with it.
I don't know.
Watercolors.
Some of it is in the
So much of it.
stuff.
This
That's
is
not
actually
bad.
like
I also think
That's horrible.
Yeah, there was
eventually it's good to get skill sets.
Jumping over sheep, but don't do that.
The only reason I can really like make three work in my head is with all the side views of access all the
Yeah,
time.
Yeah, that's understandable. I think it's a lot easier to take an exist and
I'm
change it
not that good.
how you want to. There's a principle. There's paper good.
Yeah, make it easy.
Yeah. Honestly, I use my first a lot worse than my first
Well,
my workout stuff is like better than my work.
But I mean, that's also, yeah, I feel like you start farther down on the line, but you can go a lot higher.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you can and faster.
Yeah.
They're just different.
The reason I was asking more like, if you just do a lot of drawings,
Well,
like, it's a good step away from
so like my yes,
the things that bother you or jump out quickly, like, if you're sitting there staring at like, you walk away for a few hours, stuff that bothers you.
yes, it's falling in.
Yeah, and he was doing something up and he wasn't trying to like live him and taking like overlay photos and stuff screen environment.
For that to happen,
Yeah.
necessarily the part is as you will be through most of it. So like, if it's something like this, that's perfect.
Like I wouldn't have to take photos of like graphics and
So this is the process that we have to go. And so to me, and I see a lot of really, and the more I talk about it, I really like it. Change from the second to the next. And I think it's one of those dynamic curves coming out of the chair.
I think yeah,
But otherwise, like, I like the soft.
Yeah, no,
But like the soft.
no,
Mine went off in the first as well, so I was like, oh, it's kind of the screen share.
Come figure that out. Too hard. I'm gonna simplify it. And that will slowly start to evolve in style as well.
enjoy your life.
okay. Like I can show how to
No,
You can have a question first and then I'll be.
that's fine. No, I'm glad I have that skill. I just like knowing stuff.
The screen is that. So you can tell me about that.
That's exactly what I like. I take that back. I like it.
You can make it bigger, but then you can change the size that's for the room. You can probably easier way is to just make it small.
Like
Okay.
it's kind of.
I was wondering.
Yeah. I'm also gonna like. Yeah.
What is it? It's actually more.
I hate to say that.
Yeah,
What did you send in before? Are you sure? Send it before. You guys did something when it jumps up in the air. first starts to fall, the brand should
Yeah,
like,
even
it
though
should like
it's
stagger.
Yeah,
So,
I have trouble with
I think
like
it's a little complex,
You
it's
know,
more
well,
complex,
if
so
I
much
fix this, I might not
right?
have
And I also have a bad habit of class
Yes.
where I
Like, I
would
think that switch coffee makers is better than this one.
I tried that,
Yeah, so you actually
totally
Yeah.
not do that.
Yeah, because they get faster.
Oh, this is like correct?
I think I remember playing this on the
Oh, mom, I didn't know what you were saying.
Yeah.
I really was trying to figure out how that stat worked. Yeah, no, I like that.
My birthday just passed, so like they're gonna be.
Did you know you break more sharp?
this was the weird thing about this class for me. Like when I'm teaching 3D animation,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
pretty
really
sure I'm usually the best handling of art. At least at the beginning. Like in this class, it's like, you all can draw better than me, have your, like, been doing 2D animation longer than me. I'm like, yeah, there's some concepts I'll still throw out there. I was really
Yeah, after, cause I was like,
off camera, without camera recording here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me actually put those in the camera so I can wherever you want to hang out. And we can chat up here too. I just kind of kill the video.